We're down to our final four, and I think a little bit of reporting on the Elite Eight is probably needed. A little bit of a busy time for me, so I'm going to try and keep it short. We'll see how. I've actually been doing fairly well for myself. If you know me well enough, this has been an immense cut down on time. Let's see if I can keep it going. If you've been in this pool long enough and you've ever had it yourself or a kid take all four number one seeds, you know it's very common for me to go to the well and pick one of about 5 or 6 different songs, either all four one, by a band all four one, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a lot of combinations there that I play with, but essentially I run out of gas because in any given year, I'd say in our pool there's at least 7 to 10, maybe 11 on any. It depends on the year and depends on the time, but there's always at least a few. This year there were a few more, and I think we did talk before about a little bit of a chalkiness or the top heavy kind of setup. But I was still a little bit surprised that we went 1, 1, 1, 1. I mean, I put it up last week and everyone's heard it by now. First time since 2008. And that tournament itself, I don't know if there's a lot of mirroring here because it's a totally different league. I mean, that's almost 20 years ago. That's scary just to say out loud. But I think the biggest takeaway that most people I hear are reading about and talking about is just this being a product of the transfer portal. I don't know if I can completely blame one thing. I think that's a little bit simplistic. But it is kind of disheartening that we're in the tournament when the transfer portal opens. That's just like almost rubbing people's nose in it, that teams are changing while the league is actually still happening. Even in like professional sports where we know that goes on, they do it like with at least with respect to like behind closed doors. We don't have to see it. We could pretend that they're not colluding the whole time or making these kind of off deals. And to be honest, I don't really care that much if they do. But in this one, I'm just not used to it happening during my tournament. So if you could mind wrecking next year's tournament, just wait till after this one's done. And it shouldn't be wrecking. Actually, in all honesty, we're probably getting 2 decent games. Although if you were watching a lot, the Florida-Texas Tech was kind of our best shot at that upset, if that's what you were cheering for. And given the number of people in this pool that took Florida, I don't think everyone was cheering for that. I do think, though, I mean, if you look at the last kind of stretch, it does look like a little bit of a collapse from Texas Tech. But that's if you haven't watched Florida a lot this year. They do kind of go in ebbs and flows and runs, although Texas Tech did have control and just couldn't kind of handle it. Florida, though, I think it seems like things are breaking their way because they've had a couple games where if the team really just kind of ran some good sets or was able to control their Florida's output offensively, we might not be dealing with 1-1-1-1. I'd say Auburn is in the same boat. They tend to implode. They're very player driven, and sometimes their players can be quite emotional. It just seems, though, that they ride the highs long enough. I'd say coming out of this week, and this is just the curse of death because now this is going to be a horrible game, but just my impressions, Houston looked all they were supposed to be on defense, and I do think that while I don't know matchup-wise if it was the greatest game for them, they seem to be doing enough on offense when they need it, and their defense is just that tough that by the end of the game they grind you down. And honestly, Duke just looks legit because not only, I mean, Flagg's having good games, but he obviously isn't the only one. They kind of seem like the team to beat, but they've kind of seemed like that all season long. So we'll see how that rolls. In terms of the transfer portal, though, I think is linking what I'm about to talk about with the girls. I think there's a way of doing it that isn't wrecking the game, and I don't think this is always going to be an issue, but I do think we're in for a couple years of very, very top-heavy teams where the best just keep getting richer. Again, on the girls' side, we had our only non-1. So we have 7 1s and 1 2, and it's the 1 2 that kind of felt like the one all along, especially since the injury. So I guess we can call it an upset. And you did get the bonus point, so congratulations. But I think UConn going over. USC put up a bigger fight than I think a lot of people were expecting because they are a deep team. Just when you're Mr. Number 1, eventually UConn was just too much. Not just Paige, their post players getting involved, and obviously Paige is great with distributing the ball as well. That's kind of her marquee. And it did make me feel upset, though. I really feel we got robbed of the game of the tournament with Juju being out. I know that's a very selfish way to look at it. We should be worried about the knee of a very good basketball player. But I can't help my feelings, and I definitely felt like we got burnt on that one, that probably would have been the game of at least the weekend, if not potentially both tournaments. I did mention the transfer portal thing. To say it is a men's-only issue, obviously not the case. And we got Haley Van Lith, who's now 5 years, I believe, Elite Eights each year, 3 different teams. TCU itself, if you watch that game, a very talented team, but very transfer portal heavy. And you could see it at the beginning of the game when things were getting a little bit, when you got to play the nerves out, you get your first few touches in as players. A couple of really just ridiculous turnovers where I almost feel like they didn't know where they were at times. Not to say that doesn't happen if you've played together for 3 or 4 years, but I think it's less likely for sure. A shame because they were also, I thought, a decent chance to punch up. And now we've got 2 number ones, one that we'll get to the tournament, one that is not taken. We only have 1 team left in both tournaments that no one has as a champion, unless I missed it. But we do have them as a final. And then obviously on the other side, the game that's really going to decide a lot in I would say UCLA, UConn, probably the most exciting game, I would say for me, of the weekend, although all 4 should be decent enough. But anyway, I obviously have a lot more to say. I'm going to write a little bit more down this time, but I'm a little bit pinched for time. So let's actually go to our pool because that actually might be why you watch these things. I'm not going to go in crazy detail because I wrote a little bit down. You can actually check it out yourself. But if you want to know top 7 payouts or division leaders for each on the guys' side, you can take a look at that. Because even here, we've got our first and tied for second with Connor. Connor doesn't have a shot to win it all, but he certainly has a shot to win the money because they both have Florida. Ben, however, obviously this is going to be the game for them of the tournament. Whoever wins should be in our lead. Unless it's Auburn that comes through, then we got to scroll all the way down because a lot of people tend to have Florida. But we do have some Florida champs here with John, with Omari, but they do have different finalists. So it looks like it's going to be breaking in a number of different ways. And actually, when I did this scenario, there's a lot of different people who have the potential being the money on the men's. On the women's side, it's a little bit more narrow. We don't have Texas, unless I've missed it. But even if you look here, Emma having Connecticut currently in 4th and out of the money. If Connecticut would win, obviously we know she'd be this much behind Kelly. But Kelly has South Carolina. Emma does have Texas going to the final. That, I think, would be enough to flip it. So we do have a bunch of different people who could potentially get in. And obviously, if Connecticut goes, we might even look down a little bit lower in terms of the money. Whereas if it's South Carolina, we can do the math there, right? So obviously, I do think with Texas and South Carolina, where most people have South Carolina, my bet is a lot of people's bracket in terms of whether they can win or place are really based on the Connecticut UCLA, which was another extremely common matchup. So again, if you want the actual breakdown of who would be in the money of each, on the guy side, it's exact. At the girl side, I did the best I could, but I may have missed someone, so just bear that in mind. But they should be up here. Obviously, when we get to the finals, it'll be a lot easier to figure out, but we still have a couple games to go before then. While traveling is in my future, I'm going to do my best that after the Sunday night game, and that's the women's game, so before the final, the men's final, I will try and have a finals preview where I go a little bit more in depth in terms of like who might win depending. If you want to know the scenarios, I did try and write them up in the article, so I went kind of if each of these have a final. The guys' side, that's very easy to do because they have that scenario generator. For the girls' side, for whatever reason, it's one of the random things that Yahoo doesn't do. I don't understand. It can't cost more money when you already have the algorithm. It's like they just want to make sure the divide exists. I don't know. Either way, that should get up. And one of the second to last article, then I will do a recap. Those will be a little bit different in terms of locale. Not that you've fallen in love with the background here, but it'll be a slightly different background and maybe, hopefully, not a slightly lower voice. But either way, until then, obviously the first round of the Final Four is going to get underway. Enjoy the semifinals of both tournaments. I think we're in for at least a couple decent games, maybe even a buzzer beater. I'd love to say an upset, but I don't think anything at this point is an upset. So enjoy the good basketball.